today's video, we are going to break down why a 61-year-old couple with nearly $1.7 million in savings was not able to retire. Hi, my name's Cyr, CPA, and I have helped hundreds of individuals maximize their retirement plans and make the right choice when it comes to decisions just like this. For many retirees, understanding when you can retire is an extremely difficult decision, which is exactly why I'm making this video. Today, I'm going to break down some of the decision-making factors you should consider when planning your retirement. We're going to look at how much is enough for retirement and the factors that derailed their plan, and what specific strategies we looked at to help get their retirement back on track. Now, this is a story of Neil and Jamie. I've changed their names, but the story is real. As I said, they were 61 years old. They both had good jobs, but especially Neil, he did not like his job. It was stressful. The boss was difficult. They both had worked very hard in their careers, and they expressed to me that they never really had time to do anything in their lives for them. In the last 30 years, all they really had done had worked. However, they had a life-changing event that had them considering retirement. Now, recently, Jamie had lost her mom, and that was the trigger point. Jamie's mom was 90 years old, and they actually had already visited another advisor who looked at their plan and told them that they could retire. But they weren't necessarily convinced, so they asked us for a second look. But let's now move on to Neil and Jamie. A couple additional things I want to share with you about their retirement story. Number one, they had 12 months left on their mortgage, and once that was paid, they were going to actually retire at age 62. So they basically had about 12 months to get this retirement plan right. Everybody's dreams in retirement are different. Now, in their case, Jamie's mom, who had just passed away, left a modest inheritance, and they were going to take that money and they were going to buy a motorhome. They were going to travel across the country 4 to 6 months a year. And as I said, they had already spent time with an advisor. They'd spent about 30 or 45 minutes with this advisor, and they were told that they could do just that. But we were about to find out very differently. And I'll share with you what went wrong. Here's the first question I asked. Can I see a copy of the plan? They presented to me a one-page document. There wasn't a lot of numbers on it. In fact, the only content on this document of any meaning or use was the assumptions that were made that gave them the okay, you can retire. Here's what those assumptions were. First, they had about $1.6 to $1.7 million, as I said. Number two, a key point in this financial plan was that they were going to take their Social Security as soon as they retired at age 62. The third critical assumption was that they assumed that they were going to have $5,000 a month of general living expenses. Okay, this would be everything from bills, credit cards, food, and everything. $5,000 a month. Number four, they were not going to change anything about their investments. So whatever they had in their 401k is exactly what they were going to continue to do. That asset allocation that they had, they were just going to keep that asset allocation. It had done well for them in the last 15 years. And finally, they assumed that they probably were both going to die at age 85. Yeah, 85. So I put all those numbers into the planning system, the AIM retirement planning system, and here's what it looked like at first. So you can kind of see that the basic assumptions, they were going to retire at age 62. As I said, they were going to live to be age 85. All right, and here's their monthly retirement expenses, $5,000 a month. You can see the motorhome was going to cost $200,000, and here is the inheritance they were going to get from Jamie's mom. And the only other thing we really put into this plan was the fact that they were going to take their Social Security at age 62. And that resulted in a fantastic-looking retirement plan, 100% chance of success. Most likely, they were going to die at age 85 with about $5 million, even more. So on the surface, the plan did look good, but retirement planning is much more than just throwing numbers into some software and seeing what gets spit out. This might sound silly. I've always said, to me, retirement planning is like looking at a painting. The more you look, the more you see. Now I start to dig, okay? This is where I start to ask important questions. And the right questions. This is where you really uncover the magic in a solid financial planning system. You always start with expenses because, believe it or not, nobody really seems to know what they spend. Most people don't. Some people come in and they know exactly, but I would say out of 100 people, Generally, about 5% of them actually know what they're really spending. And Neil and Jamie were no different. So it's best to use the top-down approach. So here's how that worked for Neil and Jamie. First, you start with how much do you make. In their case, they earned $230,000 a year. That's the top, okay? And so you start to kind of whittle away at where is this money going? How are they spending this money? You start with that number that they gave us. They said $5,000 a month seemed like what they were spending. That's $60,000 a year. Then, of course, everyone pays taxes. So in their case, the tax bill, FICA, income tax, state tax, all that was $58,000. And then they were putting money into their 401k, about $23,000 a year. And then, of course, they had health care, benefits, stuff like this. That was $14,000. And I told you they had a mortgage. That mortgage was $38,000 a year and only one more year. But they were spending that. That was part of their spending. And then because they had this home, you have property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and that was about $10,000 a year. Now, here's the problem. If you look at these numbers, they do not add up to $230,000. In fact, there's a missing $27,000 somewhere. Now, when you're using this top-down approach, sometimes people will uncover some additional expenses. Sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, I'm taking $27,000 a year and I'm putting it into a grandchild's college savings plan. But sometimes, and this was the case with Neil and Jamie, the $27,000 wasn't going anywhere. In fact, they were not spending $60,000 a year. They were actually spending more like $87,000 a year. So their monthly expenses for general everything was not $5,000 a month. It was more like $7,200 a month. Now, you go further and you start to ask questions. If you look at this list of numbers, what is missing? Do they walk everywhere they go? No, they have cars. So I asked about the car situation because it wasn't in their list of expenses. Well, Jamie said that her car payment was included in that top number, that $60,000 or now $87,000. But Neil revealed that he had had a company car for the last 20 years, and we uncovered the fact that they were going to have to buy a second car in retirement. So we had to add that to their plan. And then you kind of focus now on the home. Whenever there's a home, you ask questions. So I asked, tell me about your home. And they said it was beautiful, it was big, it was an older house, and they loved it. And they weren't sure if they were ever going to leave because they just thought so much about it. But when they said that word old, you have to ask more questions, okay? When is the roof going to need to be repaired in the next 30 years, right? Is that HVAC system you have going to last for 30 years? And the answer was no. So we identified and agreed that we were going to have to add about $50,000 of repairs over the life of their retirement just to keep that house up and normal as it was now as they were living in it. So I want to show you how that changed their plan. Take a look at this. So the first thing, we had to add some home expenses. And as I said, Neil, the poor guy, was going to lose his company car. So we did have to add a forever car payment in there for a second car. And then finally, we did have to change their expenses, okay? Remember, they're not spending $60,000 a year. They're spending more like $87,000 a year. So we made those changes for expenses. And as I said, you can really see the difference that changing expenses makes. It's very important. It's critical for a good retirement planning system. But they're still above that 80% level. So for me, in the AIM retirement system, if I can keep this number above 80, that feels really good to me. It's a Monte Carlo simulation. I won't get into the details of it, but I'm looking for a targeted probability of success of 80, and they were still there. But the conversation had to continue. All right, remember, they wanted to have a legacy. They had a dream in retirement. What was that dream? It was to get a motorhome and just go across the country. But there was a little problem, which is why you asked the question. Let me show you what I mean. So you remember Jamie's mom was going to give them $200,000. Well, long story short is a lot of the assets you get in retirement, or in inheritance, they don't come just free, right? In this case, there was a heavy tax burden on this annuity that was left by Jamie's mom. And in fact, after I looked at the details of this inheritance, it was going to be 150. Now, on the other side, you got poor Neil. He's got this $200,000 motorhome. Well, guess what? We went online. The sticker price was, okay, $209, something like that. But he forgot about this one thing called sales tax. So this is actually going to be a $225,000 motorhome. Now, think about this. They're buying a motorhome for the first time. They've never done this before. I asked the question, how do you get gas for this? Well, it's a lot of gas. And how much is insurance going to cost? Well, there's going to be a lot of insurance. And tell me about repairs on this. So there's actually going to have to be a travel budget. Yes, a travel budget. Because this van or this motorhome is not going to go anywhere without putting gas in it. So we did those things. The motorhome, sorry, Neil, you got sales tax, $225,000, not $200,000. And I'm sorry, Jamie, Mom did leave you a $200,000 annuity, but by the time you get your hands on it, after Uncle Sam gets his share, it's going to be about $150,000. And that travel budget was going to be about $500 a month. And we agreed to that. And this is what it looked like. Now I'm starting to see the faces of Neil and Jamie kind of get a little concerned because now we're below the 80%, but we still had more questions to ask, and I kept on going. So we have to have the discussion that nobody wants to have. It's morbid. It's about longevity. The majority of Americans underestimate how long they're going to live. When someone comes into my office or calls me on the phone or we have a Zoom call and they say, I'm never going to live to be age 85, I have to start asking questions. So in this case, I asked Neil. Remember, they were going to take their Social Security the day they retired at age 62. And I asked Neil, I go, why are you taking your Social Security so early? What's the idea behind that? And he said, well, it's very simple. In my family, we have a terrible health history. My dad passed away at 76 years old, and he spent actually the last 2 years of his life in a nursing home. And I just want to spend my money now because I probably won't live that long. But Jamie, oppositely, she had good bloodlines. Well, this is what I wanted to tell them. This is what I tell every single person. When you are born in this country, most likely your life expectancy is around 78 to 79 years old. But what about if you're 65 years old? Now you're older, you actually have a 50% chance that you are going to live past age 90. And when I look at you together, when I look at Jamie and Neil together, there's actually a 50% chance that one of them is going to live past the age of 95. Now, Jamie's mom, how old was she when she died? She was 90, okay? So it would not be prudent to have a financial plan where we assume Jamie's going to live to be age 85. I had to move that to 95. And I told Neil, look, I get that you don't have good bloodlines, but where did you tell me that your dad spent the last 2 years of his life? He needed long-term care. So we had to add these two things to that plan. And this is what that looked like. If you kind of look here, look, I'm sorry. I never do a plan where somebody's going to die at age 85. I just don't. It's not prudent, right? Because it's okay if you pass away, unfortunately, before age 85. You die with a bunch of money, great. But look, what happens if you live to age 95? Do I want to be the financial advisor that has clients coming into my office saying, I ran out of money because you assumed that I was only going to live to age 85? Here I am, a 94-year-old with no money. No, I don't want that. So we agreed to keep Neil's planning horizon at age 85, but we did change Jamie's to 95. And if you look at this, look, Neil, there's a very good chance that you too are going to be in that nursing home. And that's what this looks like here. And now you can just see there's like a look of devastation on their face where there's not enough money here. There's not enough money. And it's a hard decision. It's a hard discussion. They're frustrated and disappointed, but this is where you start to ask the most important questions of all, okay? So here's a couple of questions I asked them. I said, number one, if you had two choices, working longer or slightly modifying your lifestyle in retirement, what would you choose? Clearly, they said, we don't want to work anymore. Next question, if you had the choice between working longer and being open to potentially delaying your Social Security, optimizing your Social Security, what would you choose? We don't want to work anymore. And so a couple more questions. I said, that home, that big, beautiful old home, in the future, 20, 25 years down the line, would you be open to thinking about selling this home? They said yes. And finally, I asked, would you be willing to shift about 20% of that nest egg that you have in that 401k into mailbox money to increase income stability? And they said, what's mailbox money? And I won't go into what mailbox money is. I've made a lot of videos about that. I'll put some of those in the description. But essentially, mailbox money gives you that guaranteed paycheck for the rest of your life, very similar to like a pension or Social Security. They were open to that. So here's what that looked like. When I say reduce your expenses, I'm not telling people to cut their expenses in half. In fact, in my experience, people can generally reduce their expenses or their lifestyle by about 10%, and they can do that comfortably. And so that's change number one. What was change number two? We were going to optimize their Social Security. I'm not going to get into what we did or why we did this, but we did optimize that Social Security, and that did improve their chances of retirement success. And again, remember, they were going to sell their home. Were they going to sell it in the next 10 years? No. They were going to do it when they were about 85 years old. And then finally, this mailbox money. This is just one of the best ways to drastically improve your chances of retirement success. One of the great things about mailbox money is that it gives you a guaranteed paycheck for the rest of your life and the rest of your wife's life as well. But it allows you to take the remaining money that you still have in your investments and be more aggressive with it. So basically, changing expenses by about 10%, adding that mailbox money, always an awesome thing to do in retirement if you know what you're doing. Selling that home at age 85, not a bad strategy. Optimizing Social Security, and let's see what happened. And here we are, a plan that went from no good back to something that looked very good. And I want to show you one other screen here. This income stability is 66%. It's not perfect. I like to see that at 70, but that means that about 66% of their income throughout their lifetime is in the form of guaranteed paychecks, and I like that. And that's why you have to really ask the questions. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's situation is unique. Obviously, you should not follow generalized advice online for your specific situation. But the most important thing Neil and Jamie did was seek out a second opinion and some advice. In my opinion, as I said, this is the biggest decision you can make in retirement. The comprehensive retirement planning process, it will get closer to a solid plan that works towards your goals. Now that you know why a 61-year-old couple with $1.7 million had challenges to retire, you can use this knowledge to help plan your retirement further. If this case study resonates with you, I invite you to schedule a conversation with my team and see what the AIM retirement system can mean for you. Together, we will build a plan to help you retire confidently. To get started, click the link at the very top of this video description, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.